Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Namaste Wellness Show, where we talk about all things holistic health for the mind, body, and spirit with a touch of cultural soul. My name is Laura. I'm your host. Thank you so much for joining me. I've been on a little hiatus over the summer, but I'm really looking forward to getting back this fall and offering informative, inspiring, and just positive content for my audience, viewers, and listeners. Today, I'm really excited because I'm welcoming back a very special guest. He was one of my first podcast guests when I started back in January. And we're going to actually be doing a series of podcasts with him based on his book, At the Crossroads of Fear and Freedom, The Fight for Social and Educational Justice. Please help me welcome back I'm so proud and honored to be welcoming back Dr. Robert L. Green.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome, Dr. Green. Thank you so much for being with us. And I'm really excited because we're going to be doing this series and we're going to be talking about your legacy, your life, your contributions to the civil rights movement as a civil rights activist. We'll be talking about your education, being an educator, as well as a inspiration to African-American families, in terms of, or all families, all American families. So thanks again for being here. So welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be on your show.
Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to be covering different chapters in your book, but I really wanted to start with your life really in Lansing, because that's when a lot of stuff happened. And I want to back up a little bit before we get to Lansing. You were born in Detroit, Michigan. You were one of 9 children, a very successful family. You went to college. You got your bachelor's degree and your master's degree in San Francisco at a university in San Francisco. That's where you met your wife, Letty, and even your first son was born in San Francisco. Yes. When you graduated, though, you realized it was really challenging for a young Black man to start a career in your field, even though you did, work at a school there with African-American boys and Latino boys for a while. But you had difficulty because there was racism there, in spite of the belief that there wasn't racism in northern states of the United States. So fast forward, you eventually left California, went back to Michigan, your birth state, and started teaching, or you completed your doctorate at Michigan State University. So I want to kind of start there. And one of the things I like to start on something lighthearted, though, when I read in your book, by the way, just to let everybody know, this is a wonderful book. It's a great read, a very easy read. And honestly, when I start reading the book, it's really hard for me to put it down. So I'm really enjoying. I haven't read the whole book yet, but I'm really enjoying reading this book. So please pick it up wherever you purchase your books. I know it's on Amazon, etc. So anyway, I want to start with something light, as I said, and with your meeting with Dr. John Hanna, who was the president of Michigan State University at the time, and take us back to, you were walking to the library, a car pulls up, as you state in your book, and here he comes out and just approaches you, seemingly out the blue.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because John Hanna was a very imposing big man, and I had some problems in Lansing. Blacks in general had problems in Lansing with discrimination. And here comes this big, husky-looking white man walking real brisk, approaching me. Mm-hmm. I said, oh, my God. I said, do I have to go into my wrestling stance? I was a wrestler. I was a wrestler at San Francisco State. I was on the wrestling team. And he approached me. He said, "Young man, where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to the library." He said, "Well, why are you going there?" I said, "Well, I'm working on my degree and I'm going there to look up some references." He said, "What degree are you working on?" I said, "Sir, I'm working on my PhD." He said, "You're working on your PhD?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, I want to talk to you." And I don't recall what we really, it wasn't very much that we chatted about. But he said, "If you ever need anything, young man, you come see me." Well, I said, "Well, sir, I need to know who you are. I can't come see you if I don't know who you are." He said, "My name is John Hanna. I'm president of Michigan State University." Oh, I said, "Oh, well, yes, sir." I said, "I will come see you." Little did he know that down the road, he would be spending time with me and with many of the students at Michigan State University, both black and white. But John Hanna, to me, was always, I thought, a very fair-minded person.
Mhm.
He was no nonsense.
Mm.
And no matter what people say, John Hanna ran East Lansing.
All right.
He was the man. And not I know of no one hardly who ever challenged him or his leadership, black or white, or Hispanic for that matter. John Hanna was tough. And when he wanted things done, he got them done.
Okay.
I think the very interesting thing about this meeting, uh, John Hanna was asked by President Lyndon Baines Johnson to do a piece on discrimination in the state of Alabama.
Mm.
And he had in his hand the report that he had written that he was going to present to the president of the United States.
Mm.
And he asked me, he said, "Well, I want to talk with you some more, and I look forward to seeing you maybe in the fall." I said, "Mr. Hanna, I don't know if I'll be here in the fall." He said, "Why not?" I said, "I can't buy a home." He said, "You what?"
Mm.
I said, "I'm having trouble buying a home in East Lansing." And so my wife and I are looking around, we're thinking about things. And I said, "I have an offer, possible offer for a position at BU, Boston University."
Wow.
And I said, "I might take it." Little did I know, Laura, at the time, I didn't know anything about Martin Luther King Jr.
Mm.
and BU. You know, Martin Luther King Jr. went to Boston University. And I didn't know it at the time.
Wow.
I hadn't focused on it. But I told him that I may not be here in the fall because I can't buy a home. He said, "Well, we can take care of that." That's what he said. I
Wow.
said, "All right." I said, because uh, the offer from BU, Boston University, is a pretty solid one. And I probably will be quite interested in pursuing it.
Mm.
So he looked at me, and I didn't realize it, but at the time, he had in his hand a handwritten report from himself to President Lyndon Baines Johnson about how terrible it was for blacks in Alabama.
Wow.
It was the Alabama report that he did as a request of President Johnson. So I guess I was thinking later on, Lord, what was going through his mind? Here I have a report in my hand that I'm going to present to the President of the United States about discrimination against blacks in the state of Alabama. And I have a faculty member at my university who's about to leave here
Mm.
because he can't buy a home. He
And
said,
can you explain what was the situation around the reason why you weren't able to buy a home at that time?
Only because I was black.
Okay.
East Lansing was a closed white community,
Okay.
and blacks couldn't buy a home there. Whites would just tell you. I had whites tell me, I'm not going to sell it to you. We don't sell to blacks.
Hmm.
And so I was aware of it, and it was very little you could do. So John Hanna decided he was going to set up a human relations commission.
Hmm.
That is the one there right now. The lady who handles the human relations commission in Lansing, you might want to get to know her. She's a very good person, and that's why he set up the Human Relations Commission to fight discrimination against blacks and other minorities in the city of East Lansing.
Okay.
Nobody black. If you were black, people just point blank. We don't sell to blacks. They didn't apologize. They didn't say, I'm sorry. They just told you point blank, we don't sell to blacks.
Now, I do have a question though. In your book, you said that they had actual zoning. There was something they would do with the zoning so that blacks were not able to purchase
You live
homes.
in a certain section
Uh-huh.
of East Lansing, right?
Mhm. Okay.
That's true. They call it zoning.
Uh-huh.
It is a discriminatory zoning. And
Okay.
that was apparent in school districts around the country, not just East Lansing. I had several guys who were friends of mine who had similar positions or about to get positions at universities like um, Columbus, Ohio,
Mhm.
and so forth. I would call these, at the time they were men, call them and say, look, I'm having trouble buying a home in East Lansing. Are you having a similar problem in Evanston, Illinois, or
Mhm.
Ohio State? And they would laugh at me. They said, what do you mean? We can't buy a home in Evanston. We can't buy a home in Columbus, Ohio. So the kind of discrimination that I was faced with, I was not naive. I
Right.
was of the opinion that East Lansing was an open community.
Mhm.
But I must say the bluntness of discrimination was something that had an impact on me. People didn't apologize. They said, we don't sell to blacks.
Right.
The area in East Lansing off Harrison Road, we used to call it the flower pot area because everybody in that area had nice flowers that they grew. And we call it the flower pot. Blacks couldn't live in it. We
Mhm.
call it the flower. Couldn't live in the flower pot area of East Lansing. So East Lansing, uh, like San Francisco, another place I lived, I met my wife in San Francisco, my wife Letty, and we
Mhm.
got married there. People talk about, oh, liberal San Francisco, what a great town. That's BS.
Mhm.
San Francisco is a town with racism like every other town in America. And I'm a witness to that because I drove a yellow cab. I was the first black to drive a yellow cab in San Francisco after a boycott by the San Francisco NAACP. Blacks couldn't drive a cab. Blacks, there were certain areas of San Francisco where blacks couldn't live. So I learned quickly that racism and segregation was an American staple.
Mhm.
Was an American staple.
Right.
When people talk about, oh, I love San Francisco, oh, the song, I left my heart in San Francisco. I leave my heart in San Francisco because I was glad to get out of there and get up to East Lansing to work on my PhD.
Right. Well, good. Yeah. Well, I didn't say this earlier, but I do have some questions, I'll say
Oh,
from, audience that were already pre-written. And I'm just going to read one of the questions here. And this is going back to, how racially segregated it was in East Lansing to purchase a home for Blacks. You talked about some of the challenges and obstacles you face. The purchase of your home in East Lansing was a significant milestone in breaking down barriers and promoting racial integration. Can you discuss the impact of this event on the local community and in terms of the broader civil rights movement?
Okay. Well, yeah, racism did exist.
Mhm.
And it was well known that certain sections of East Lansing and Lansing you couldn't buy.
Mhm.
You could not purchase a home if you were a person of color.
Right.
And I think that more than anything else was what caused me to begin to appreciate John Hanna. John Hanna was not afraid. He was not a fearful university president, as you might say.
Right.
And John Hanna ran East Lansing.
Right.
So when I told him that he had a report on discrimination in Alabama, that he was going to present to the president of the United States. And before him was a young black guy with a PhD who had just got his PhD who couldn't buy a home in his town.
Right.
So he was faced with a dilemma. And he said, I don't want you to leave. He said, we'll find your home. Now, there was a guy, Vera, his wife's name. He was an English professor. I can't think of it. You might be able to find him somewhere. He was an English professor. His wife was Hicks. No, not Hicks. His wife was well, anyway. They had a white couple. They had trouble buying a home. And they lived over off of I can't think of the name of that area, but it's really a nice area, section of East Lansing. And they could not buy a home. And a white couple who was on the faculty in the English department bought a home for them. So that's one thing John Hanna said to me. He said, hey, he used to call me professor. He said, Professor, I tell you what, why don't I buy a home and then I just sell it to you? I said, Mr. Hanna, I'm going to do that. I said, because the next black coming along is going to have the same problem.
Right.
He understood that. He said, you're right. We need to tackle the issue. I said, that's right. I said, because if you buy me a home, John Blow or Joe Blow will come by, a professor of math, and he won't be able to buy a home. As a matter of fact, it was a professor of math who at Michigan State who sold me his home. And whites were very angry with him. Laura, I'll try to find his name. Some of these references I can get back to you on. Okay. This was a professor in the math department, and he was known as a liberal, and whites told him not to sell me a home. He sold me a home anyway.
Okay.
Professor of math.
Wow.
So when I hear things like liberal San Francisco, liberal Bloomington, Indiana, Ohio State, not true. Blacks in America at that time had trouble buying a home in areas that were seen as white areas.
Okay. So once you guys were able to do that, how did it open up? Well, there were actually some strategies that additional strategies that you had to go through to make the purchase of the home as well. Or were there any additional things that you had to actually do to be able to purchase the home?
We had the money.
Okay.
always tell blacks, I used to always tell my black students,
Uh-huh.
don't judge white people like white people judge us, because all white people are not bad people. And there was a guy who and his wife who had a little money,
Uh-huh.
and his name was Jerry Wish.
Mhm.
And if he sees this program, Jerry, please call me. I haven't seen you in years.
Mhm.
Jerry Wish and his wife became close to that 89. And he told me if Jerry Wish's father died and his mother inherited a dairy outside of Columbus, Ohio, but they had the money.
Mhm.
And he said, Bob Green, if you ever have trouble, getting a home and money is an issue, you let me know. So it
Mhm.
was Jerry and Marianne Wish that loaned us part of the down payment on the home that we bought in East Lansing. And that was not unusual. Always, as I said, I would always tell students, don't judge all white people the same, like sometimes a few of them do to us.
Right.
And it was that kind of relationship that I had with some whites
Mhm.
that if I needed something,
Mhm.
I didn't abuse it. If I
Right.
needed something and they had resources, they make it available to you.
Okay.
A good person, he's dead now, John Dooley. John and Betty Dooley were a white couple in East Lansing that were tough, and
Mhm.
they fought to help us get a home.
Okay.
And I always say, I knew very few white people who were afraid of other white people, but people were afraid of John and Betty Dooley because they were tough and they would get in your face, and they fought to help us get a home in East Lansing, not financially, but just using their influence.
Okay.
Another good person, he is well known. His wife, Francie Duffy Doherty, was a football coach. His wife, Francine Doherty, and my wife became friends.
Mhm.
So she would do things like this. Francie Doherty had a lot of very influential white female friends.
Mhm.
And so she would invite her friends over and introduce them to my wife and say, they're good people. And they in turn would, I shouldn't say handle, they would resist
Mhm.
whites who were racially prejudiced.
Okay.
Francie Doherty was her name. His name was Duffy Doherty. He was a football coach at Michigan State. So I can say this: growing up, growing up in East Lansing was an experience.
Mhm.
Growing up in a university town was an experience
Absolutely.
because there were whites who wanted to be, I should, uh, who felt they were liberal
Mm.
until other whites put pressure on them about a black neighbor moving into the community. So
Wow.
we had that experience too.
Okay. Now, did you find that once you all were able to get into the community as a Black family, did it open doors for other African Americans to be able to move in sooner or later, or did you
Well,
know?
probably sooner and later.
Okay.
Uh, I think John Hanna set up the Human Relations Commission,
Uh-huh.
and the Human Relations Commission played a role in opening up East Lansing. And there's a young black female now who heads the Human Relations Commission. You might want to meet her. I know her very well. She's head of the Human Relations Commission in East Lansing, Michigan.
I think you gave me her name before. Do you have her name, or I
Uh,
can look it up? She's the
yeah,
head of the Human
I
Relations.
don't.
Okay. Yeah.
And she was a good person. She is a good person.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, you bring up some very interesting points that even though well, first of all, it's almost like if you knew certain people, or I'd say white people in the area that were advocating for African American rights at the time, and they had influence, so that really helped you and your family to be able to buy a home. And you also say another interesting point: don't judge a book by its color. Don't judge all white people the same way as you wouldn't want white people to judge all Black people. Because I know I think what you're saying is that a lot of times white people will just say, judge us all and put us all in one basket as well. Instead of looking at us as being a part of a human family, we're all categorized in, this race or that culture, and everybody in that race and everyone in that culture is the same, or but whereas we're not all the same.
Right.
Yeah, I totally get that, and that makes a lot of sense. I wanted to really touch on also, and we're going to cover a lot of this and probably go over a lot of this again in different aspects of East Lansing, but tell us a little bit about your meeting with Dr. King. I know you first met him when you were in San Francisco, and he told you, you said you would like to work with him, and he told you go ahead and get, your degree, and once you got it, your degrees and everything, then check back in with me. But actually, when you invited him to Michigan State, he actually reached out to you and said, "Hey, brother, why don't you come and work with us?" Right? Tell
Yes,
us a
right.
little bit about that, how that.
Well, it was both Andy Young, who right now is in Washington, D.C., at that March on Washington, and Dr. King. Uh, Andy had mentioned, I ran into him somewhere, I don't know. He said, brother, you ought to come. It was interesting how blacks would approach other blacks. I had this happen several times. I would have a job. They find out I'm at Michigan State. Ooh, you up there at that all white, cushy, used to call it cushy, university. Why don't you come down here in Alabama and Mississippi and work with us and see what it's really like? And the one person who really tutored me on racism and how to deal with racial discrimination was a woman by the name of Septima Clark.
Mm.
When I went to work for Dr. King, Septima Clark sat me down. She worked for Dr. King. She was kind of I always call her the mother of the civil rights movement.
Oh, okay.
And Septima, if you look her, I'll spell it Septima. Septima, Septima Clark. She was from Charleston, South Carolina. And Septima was one who, when I first went to work for Dr. King, who was kind of like a dear friend to Letty and I. She and Andy Young's deceased wife, Jean Young, they were two people. And there was another third woman, Dorothy Cotton. They kind of reached out to my wife and helped me along the way. And of course, Dr. King, after I had been with him for a short time, put me in charge of voting rights in the state of Mississippi. Can you imagine that?
Wow.
For the summer of 1966.
Mm.
The summer, you'll find in my book a picture of me climbing up a flagpole. And that's in the book. In Mississippi. And that was because Mississippi was such a mean state. So Dr. King put me in charge of voting rights. I worked the full summer of 1966, in the state of Mississippi. And to show you how times change, Andy Young told me a short time ago, oh, Grenada, Mississippi was known as one of the meanest towns in Mississippi. Grenada, that's Grenada, Grenada.
Mm-hmm.
And the police chief's name was Suggs Ingram.
Mm-hmm.
There's a picture of Suggs in my book, in which he was threatening to shoot me.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Suggs, you know what? I had taught at Michigan State that morning, got on an airplane, flew to Chicago, to Atlanta, to Jackson, Mississippi. In those days, you kind of dressed up when you lectured.
Mm-hmm.
And I still had my suit, shirt, and tie on. And I found out that whites in the South, especially, were shocked when you didn't show fear.
Mm-hmm.
Well, see, I knew from the backwoods of the Black community that Suggs had shot and killed several men, Black men.
Yeah.
Suggs, his name was Suggs Ingram. And I would ask people why. They said, well, if you were late for work, if he didn't like you, he'd shoot you. And I said, well, what happened? They said, nothing happened. So there's a picture in my book of me. I did the unthinkable thing. I shook my finger in his face. And I said, Suggs, the only reason you're not shooting me is because we got all these television cameras around. I said, if these TV cameras were running around, you would shoot me.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was telling him. So Dr. King put me in charge of voting rights in Mississippi. So that's where I spent most of the summer of '66 in Mississippi. And I'm always thankful to my wife, Letty, because she took care of my sons while I traveled. I was gone a lot.
Right.
And she had a few incidents, but she handled it well. My wife was one of these people who would stand up, stand tall.
Right.
And so she was a very good person and took good care of my three sons while I was traveling. And I always thank her for that. Letty was born and raised in Texas. So she knew about whites, she knew about discrimination, and she was not afraid.
Okay.
Letty was not a fearful person. And I think that's why she became.
They say, I guess, the key to a bully is to not be afraid,
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Well, I think that's why she and Coretta King became such close friends. My wife is a very tight mouth person, as they say. My wife doesn't gossip, in other words.
Right.
And so Coretta King loved Letty, and she would let Letty travel with her because she knew my wife. I remember once Coretta called, said, Letty, I want you to come go to Jamaica with me. And they went to Jamaica. And I remember when it happened because I went to Joe Biden's hometown and spent a week and a half there. Well, Letty went to Jamaica with Coretta. To this day, I know Coretta told her a lot. My wife has never told me anything that she and Coretta discussed for that week and a half that they were together in Jamaica. And that's why she wanted Letty to go with her. She wanted to talk to somebody.
Yeah,
and my wife hasn't even told me what Coretta King shared with her. And so Letty was a good person, is a good person, I should say. My wife, a good person, and she keeps stuff to herself. But she knows a lot. You should interview her one day, Laura.
Okay, if she lets me, I'd be happy to interview her with you, the two of you together. I know the first time she said she wasn't that she didn't want to do it. So, but if she ever changes her mind, Letty, you're always welcome.
Yeah.
I
Well,
love
you're like family, so
yeah.
Letty won't have to worry about you
Oh no. Well, I
talking.
am family, right?
Yeah, you are family.
I am family.
Because you knew Sadie Ashford
Yeah.
and a lady by the name of Lamar.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like
Queen
I
Anne
said,
Lamar
and Queen Anne
and
Lamar.
Sadie Ashford. They
Yeah.
were my father's two favorite sisters.
Really? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
they were also my grandmother was their sister too, Maddie.
That's something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Sadie Ashford, Sadie was my favorite because Sadie was generous.
Yes, she would.
If she had $5,
You would get, yeah.
you could get it.
She was
I
there.
always paid, and I never forget. She loved Bob, so she said Bob always paid me back.
All
Oh,
right.
Sadie Ashford. But anyway, it's your interview.
Yeah, that's okay. No, I love my Aunt Sadie too. Um, let's talk a little bit about, I know you also you also invited Malcolm X to speak at Michigan State University, right? You said he was actually born in Lansing, Michigan, I believe.
He
So
was
can you
right.
tell us anything about
Well,
that?
it's interesting. It was the white.
And the differences
Yeah.
between
It
Martin
was
Luther
the
King.
white students who knew that I knew Malcolm X, and not the black. The white students came to me and said, "We want to meet and hear Malcolm X."
Wow.
I
Okay.
said, "Okay." So I found him, and I never forget. We were in the Kiva of the College of Education, and I was hooking him up with the microphone.
Uh-huh.
He said, "You are the only. I would only let a black man put a rope around my neck," and he didn't
I did.
realize that it was live. All 450 students there are white. They just rolled on the floor. So he started it off like that.
Okay.
I was looking at him. He said, damn, I never thought I'd let anybody, but he said, you brother. So I would never let a white person put a rope around my neck.
Right.
Malcolm was a good person. Uh, and I remember I went to the black church, El Bethel, not El Bethel, well, anyway, in Selma, and Dr. King was in the church talking to about 200 ministers,
Mm.
and I went in and I saw Ralph Abernathy, and I said, Ralph, Malcolm X is outside. He wants to talk to Martin Luther King. He said, well, King doesn't have time to talk to him because, he's talking to his ministers. So, me, I was the big professor from Michigan State. So I just walked past Ralph. I ignored that.
Mm.
And I went up and I grabbed Dr. King's coattail. I said, Malcolm X is outside. He wants to see you. He said, really? Like, really? I said, yeah. I said, he wants to see you. So he got another minister to come up to the pulpit and to speak. And Malcolm, yeah, Dr. King went outside, and it was the best discussion he told me later that he ever had with Malcolm X.
Wow.
He said, Malcolm X said, whenever you are in jail, don't worry, we will protect your wife, Coretta. She will not be hurt. No one will lay a hand on her.
Yeah.
That's what Malcolm X told Martin Luther King Jr. And I'll never forget that.
Okay.
And I always said to my wife, Letty, Malcolm X is a good guy.
Yeah.
Good guy. He was not afraid, and he wasn't afraid of white. Malcolm wasn't afraid of anybody.
Right.
And especially white folk.
Yeah.
And he would thank me so much for going in the church. He and Dr. King stood outside of the church for about half hour, 40 minutes talking.
Really?
And Coretta King, of course, appreciated it because I told her what the conversation was about. So, Lola, in a way, I had good years at Michigan State.
Yes.
But the best years of my life probably were with Martin Luther King Jr.
Wow. Okay.
And I learned to respect him. He was honest. He was decent. He was not afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't judge anybody.
Wow.
I think that's why he got along so well. Others didn't, was Malcolm X.
Yeah. Even though their views and approaches were very
different, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one person who understood both Dr. King and Malcolm X both was Stokely Carmichael.
Mm.
Remember Stokely?
Wasn't he? Well, now he was with the Black Panthers. Was he?
Yeah, well,
Or,
he was with the black group, all black group.
okay.
He was with SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee.
Oh, okay.
So he was with SNCC.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And he had a lot of respect for Martin King. And in my book, you'll find a picture of Stokely Carmichael on the floor talking, and Andy and I were sitting on the couch. And I think Ralph Abernathy might be on the couch. We were all talking about social change. But I respected Stokely Carmichael. Stokely didn't like white people, and he would fight.
Mm.
But he told Dr. King, he said, I will never start a fight. But he said, I will never let a white person or anybody really, but we talk about whites, put a hand on me. And I won't let them put a hand on you if I'm around. And so there's a picture of me, all of us somewhere in that book.
Look for it, and because I mean we've got more podcasts coming up, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about more. We're going to be talking about more Lansing stuff too, because you did so much in terms of you and Arthur Ashe. I know did work with the college athletes to get them more resources and to get more equity or equality for them as well. So there's so much that we're going to be covering with you, but I think we're pretty much at time now. I don't know if you want to, if anyone wants to contact you or find out more about your book. I know you're author of several books, but we've been focusing.
That's the most recent one.
Yeah.
Up to date. At the crossroads of fear and freedom.
So do you have a website or you on any other sites where people, if someone wants to get more information about your work? In between.
Yeah.
Provide that to her.
What's that?
We'll provide her that information.
I'll get you that. Kurt said we'll get you that information.
Okay, well, we'll have more information.
Anybody who wants a copy of it right now, have them send me a note.
Or you can actually pick it up on
Amazon.
Go on Amazon.
Coach said go on Amazon, they can get it.
Yes, you can get the book. It's like I said, it's a great read. At the crossroads of fear and freedom, the fight for social and economical or educational justice. Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Green, for being with us, and I look forward.
Good talking to you.
All right. Any final words?
Back to say goodbye to you.
Okay, I'll give you all any final words that you want to share, any takeaways or.
Well, what I want to talk to you about sometime is how we were able to overcome discrimination at Michigan State.
Okay, definitely want to cover that. Yeah.
Cover that.
Yeah, and I think that was good, Laura. I think just kind of following his book, chapter by chapter, is a good approach.
All right. So just one more. Thank you so much, Dr. Green, for being on the podcast. And please, everyone, look forward to future podcasts in the series as we talk about the life, legacy, and contributions of Dr. Robert L. Greene. If you want to get more information, you can go to robertlgreenassociates.com and to that website to get more information. So I'm going to give you the last word, Dr. Greene, before we close.
Well, good luck to you and your work. Next time around, we'll talk about discrimination in East Lansing, Michigan, and let people know that it wasn't always Alabama, Mississippi, or Arkansas. It was little places like Bloomington, Indiana, and Michigan State, East Lansing, where discrimination against Blacks was very active.
Okay, and then we can also look at the progress that came about after your contributions as well, because there's a lot going on. Okay, so I'm going to thank you again for being on the show. Thank you all for watching. Stay safe, stay well. Until next time, namaste.
Thank you very much, and you have a good day.
My pleasure.